Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Onaji Muid, also known as Baba J. And it is truly an honor to be with you this morning. If you're calling from different places, certainly you may be in a different time zone, but I'm here on the East Coast and really happy about today in this campaign. You have been invited to uh, the whole entire campaign, but certainly to this event today. This is the inaugural year for Social Work Advocacy, 40 Acres and a Mule Reparations Day and Reparations Year. It's a call to action campaign that started on March 28th of this year, and it will conclude today in terms of the formal activities connected with the campaign. Our co-host, I'm the co-chair of the campaign, and our co-host, Dr. Nikki Jones, will speak to affiliation and efforts that she's done. In COBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, we assert there are at least 5 minimum harm areas. And these areas are peoplehood and nationhood is 1, education is 2, criminal punishment is 3, wealth and poverty is 4, and health is 5. And of course, we want to say these are minimum areas, but we wanted to create a framework to understand what the harm has been, what the injury has been. So when we speak of nationhood, peoplehood, and nationhood, we say it's been a systematic destruction of African cultures, language, and group identity. This includes activities, historical and ongoing efforts to deny Black people of African descent their group identity and prevent them from collectively acting on their shared interests. So we're living in domestic colonialism. Dr. Martin Luther King said that, and certainly Malcolm X has said it as well, but people don't know the depth of King's thinking. He says Black people are living in domestic colonies. The second area is education. The historical denial of the right to read, to write. We know this was part of slavery. The irony of it is they taught us how to count because we were keeping inventory of information of cows and horses and supplies. So we were well involved with mathematics under slavery. And now, of course, the reverse has happened, where many of our people have shied away from numbers in mathematics, which is a shame. Of course, we're the ones who brought mathematics to the world. Um, Under education, we know that it was through Brown versus the Board of Education that changed the quality of our existence because we had the highest quality of Black education. I'm reminded by Dr. Mario Bedelli when we were litigating, was putting together a litigation documents, and he spoke of his mother, who was a teacher, and how she was fired from her position and all of the resources that was part of uh, our people at that time were extracted, right? So much to say about that. The third area is criminal punishment. The legacy, of course, of Black codes, convict leasing, mass incarceration, racial profiling, the whole containment system, uh, as Sashi Markinshire says, criminalizing a race, right? A whole race was made illegal under the rubric of American imperialism. And then wealth and poverty, the whole purpose was for exploitation. The multi-generational economic deprivation stemming from unpaid labor, predatory lending, redlining, pink lining, as it's called now, exclusion from wealth building opportunities in education. This has resulted in mass pervasive racial wealth gap. I'm hoping to find some of these young people that could create a chart starting from 1776 We can go before them, but I'm going to say 1776, given the so-called American Revolution and how wealth was accumulated in white communities and then how wealth was sucked out of black communities, right? So one is going up and one is going down. Um, I would hope this, and maybe a graph such of that nature exists. I would like to see that because some people are visual learners, some people audio, some people like to read. So we have to create all those different ways of engaging in the learning process. But certainly we want to show that graphically for all these areas. And the last area is health, the historic and ongoing disparities in physical and mental health care. This area covers medical experimentation, hospital closures in the Black communities, transgenerational epigenetic trauma, which exists, and now we're putting a handle on it, and we're able to now begin to uh, reference what is called the Cobra Harm Report, where we're looking at epigenetics and seeing it from as a lens to understand our current health status, but also as a blueprint to move forward. So when we have the science of something, we can certainly use it as analysis in terms of looking back, but also we can project it forward in terms of what we want to achieve. So we have to be engaged in a campaign such that we'll be able to um, trans transform ourselves, right? In terms of the health status that we want. There's a book called The Health of a Nation by Amerigo. I'll put that in the chat, which I'm hoping that I'd like to start a campaign where people will start to actually study it and create health circles. We'll talk about that later. But this campaign, the inaugural social work advocacy 40 acres and a mule reparations day, reparations year, it's a call to action. Um, we were really blessed in terms of divine AI. When I say AI, I'm talking about ancestral intelligence. We was blessed on March 28th when Appeal, an organization out of DC, um, actually invited Nkechi Tiafa, one of the major reparationists in our country and in the world, and she actually spoke to the recent United Nations declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. She gave a talk for about 2 hours on the March 28th. It just so happened the ancestors said, okay, once I saw that they were doing that, and we had already started to uh, plan for March 28th as the inaugural Social Work Advocacy Day for ourselves, I put those two things together. So it was a day that we had a chance to see uh, two of the prominent reparations lawyers, sisters, to speak. In the morning, it was Nkechi Tiafa. We took a break for an hour, and then we had our elder, Ajua Ayatollah, to speak in that second part of the day from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Social Workers for Reparations and Corporate Health Committee has been the two organizations, if you will, that has shepherded this process. And it's for a number of reasons that we are so glad that you are here today. I'll go on to say that during that period, and the question may be asked, why March 28th? Well, for a number of reasons. One is it was when Dr. Nikki Jones invited me and a number of other reparation activists around the country to participate in a panel discussion that was taped on March 28th, 2022. So we were commemorating the launch of this campaign of getting social workers involved with the reparations movement. And also it was the UN Declaration for Victims of the Slave Trade, right, was also celebrated, I think, on March 25th. So that was also another event that made March 28th, significant. And why June 12th? Well, that's because it was Nkechi Tiafa who invited me and also Barbara Leonard, ancestor Barbara Leonard Jeffers, excuse me, Leonard Dunstan, excuse me, Leonard Dunstan to participate in discussion. And also in the discussion was the former national chairperson of the National Association of Black Social Workers. And that was recorded. So the campaign is a throwback in that we're inviting you to go back and watch those videos to pull information from them. In the same way that we're gathering today for this event, we want you to invite family, friends, and others around the table for you to watch those other films as well. So it was in fact, it's been said that that was the last public, if you will, engagement that Barbara Leonard had participated in. He was a statesman, no doubt, uh, regal, royal, intelligent, compassionate. I mean, he was an incredible human being, and we suffered a great loss in his transition. So we have dedicated this campaign to him, and we have used one of the Ghanaian uh, symbols, and if I'm saying it, Bo Mi Na Mi Mia Wo, probably saying it wrong, but it says, "Help me and let me help you." And in the the chart, in terms of the graphic, we've had both of those symbols, and it has two triangles, one coming down, one coming up, and then it has arms. So it's almost like you're looking at two people, one on top, one on the bottom, and the one on top is pulling the person up. And we have Leonard Dunstan's picture, and we have the symbols on both sides of him. And we're honored to remember him and continue his work. So again, we want you to go back and look at that interview that took place on June the 12th, 2022. I say 22, I think it's 24 as well. So that gives you a little background to the campaign, and we have outlined 5 different things that we'd want to take place. One is viewing of not only those 2 recordings that I just mentioned, but we've also had interviews and we've had other recordings take place during the period of March 28th and June the 12th. So that's on the website. And I'll put the website in the chat so people can access that, and you can register and go back and look at those events at your leisure. So that's one. Two is to recall that it was on May the 4th, 1969, that human rights activist James Foreman, whose name you would remember, but you might not remember the name Irvin Davis, who was my teacher, my mentor, when they interrupted worship at Riverside Church in New York City and read what was called the Black Manifesto. And if you're not familiar with that, I would like to invite you to Google that, pull it up, and bring it into your consciousness and into your work, because we build on the shoulders of those who came before us. So often that interruption at Riverside Church is attributed to James Forward, but I can actually show you a picture where Irvin Davis was standing right behind him. Irvin Davis was a revolutionary, the Pan-African Revolution, international revolutionary, who not only was a co-founder of the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, and they knew all the revolutionary movements in Africa in the 60s and the 70s, visited them, was close friends with them, so much so that when Irvin made his transition prematurely, the United Nations had a tribute to him, and that might have been the first one that was done, maybe the first one that was done for African-born in the United States. But Irvin Davis was just as much a part of that. And then, of course, if we speak about James Foreman, and Davis, we must speak about SNCC, because that's where they met and that's where they worked. It was Foreman who created the international chair for SNCC, and Irvin was the first appointed international representative doing international work. And that was on May the 4th, 1969. So we want you to put that on your calendar. On every May the 4th, you will be able to recognize them and the work they did, because once that really created the public awareness, and really just interrupted not only the service, but interrupted the silence. Now, of course, other people had already brought reparations forward, like Queen Mother Moore, needless to say, Imari Obadeli, in the forming of in Cobra, but that event is pivotal. And the third thing we want you to do is to be here today, right? And some of you may not be here today as far as live in the event, but we'd want you to actually view this event once it's concluded, as well as the other events. And the fourth thing we'd like you to do is to actually read the articles and start to construct your own library on reparations. And you can start with the article Social Work and Reparations, Applying a Restorative Justice Approach by Dr. Jones and Dr. McElderry. Social Work and Reparations, Applying Restorative Justice, and this is in the Journal of Ethnic and Cultural Diversity in Social Work, 32 uh, pages 57 to 66, right? So we're going to make that article very available to you. We want you to also purchase the book Reparations on Fire, right? How and Why It's Spreading Across America by our illustrious Nkechi Tiafa, 2022. And of course, the fifth is to join Appeal and Social Workers Reparations and the Cobra. Join these organizations, these movements, and continue to learn, build, and to build the movement. So that gave you this, I think that's given you a little bit of background in terms of the campaign. But now I would like to ask Dr. Jones to speak to us about Social Workers for Reparations. I was thoroughly impressed with the statement, the absence of reparatory justice and social work neglects the profession's commitment to promote social justice and social change with and on behalf of vulnerable and historically oppressed peoples. Dr. Jones, please give us a little background about Social Workers for Reparations and your particular um, commitment to this campaign. Thank you.
Hello, Baba J, and hello, everyone, and welcome. I want to first of all acknowledge the work that you've done in your vision for the social work advocacy reparations call to action campaign, Baba J, and I appreciate you extending an invitation to social workers for reparations and collaborating on this campaign. So, social workers for reparations emerged out of some of the work that Dr. Kathy McElderry and myself were doing, some of the scholarly work. We've published a series of articles centered on reparations advocacy within the social work profession because social workers, or at least the national organizations or professional organizations, um, they they have signaled a commitment to social justice across racial, social, economic, and environmental domains. However, the profession as of yet has not, and when we say the profession, we're talking about some of the main professional organizations like the National Association for Social Workers, the IFSW, the International Federation of Social Workers, the Council on Social Work Education, have not explicitly or any other way forwarded or advanced any support for reparations within their policy, position statements, the educational policy and accreditation standards, et cetera. And so our scholarship really centers reparations as a area that requires more inquiry in terms of social worker support for reparations legislation, and also social workers activism around reparations, and then giving social workers information about what reparations constitute. And so appreciate you lifting up one of our first publications around social workers attitudes around reparations. And so it's really been that work that encouraged me to participate and support this campaign, and I'm very grateful for you inviting me here. Thank you.
No, thank you. So what we wanted to do is give you more background in terms of this subject. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to share in a viewing of what was called Durban 400. Uh, Attorney Roger Wareham is our guest speaker today, and he'll be coming on probably within another hour or so. This event is from 11 to 1, so we have time. So we'll just show the film Durban 400, and that was the title of the organizing campaign that was launched by the December 12th movement, of which Roger is a member. I'm not sure if he's a co-founder, but he certainly is one of their chief advocates. And I don't think there's anyone from our community that has gone back and forth to Geneva and various UN conferences over the last anywhere 40 to 50 years. He's been consistent in terms of making that trip and making sure that our voices are heard, continuing the work of Du Bois and Patterson in terms of we charge genocide, a thought advocate, innovator, and it's in his work in creating 400. We had about 400 people and organizations in Durban, South Africa. So the Durban 400 comes from our trip to Durban, South Africa in 2001, when slavery was declared a crime against humanity. And of course, that was step number one. And step number two was the recent declaration that was held in at the United Nations. So you can see we're making progress, ever so slow, given the amount of resistance against our work, but ever so consistent. And that's the thing that's going to win the day. So what I'm going to do now is to share my screen and go to the film. Okay, there's no sound. Oh, wait, is this coming?
In the fall of 2001, the Durban 400, a coalition of grassroots activists from the African diaspora, was formed to take the issue of reparations for the transatlantic slave trade to Durban, South Africa for the UN World Conference Against Racism, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerances. Their demand for a final declaration that addresses the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism as crimes against humanity and that reparations are due African descendants was viewed by the United States government and their allies as inflammatory.
Be clear that our goal as Africans is to go to Durban to fight for the issue of the transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity, colonialism, a crime against humanity.
The Western press is reporting that the World Conference Against Racism won't be successful if the United States and its European allies do not participate. We take the opposite position. We say that we have forced the Western world up against the wall on the question of the transatlantic slave trade being a crime against humanity, the economic roots of racism being examined, and that reparations are owed African people throughout the world.
We're not talking about individuals when we talk about reparations. We're not talking about whether or not you're guilty or you're not guilty as an individual or you have some guilt complex. We're talking about the culpability of governments and states.
So now they will have to come to Durban and put the issue on the table for the world to see.
Durban 400 is a Pan-African coalition of brothers and sisters from the diaspora who came to Durban to make a statement, and a very simple one, that there was a crime committed against African people, that crime was rooted in economics, and that crime must be compensated. The Durban 400 represent the expression of our people all around the world that we must bring to closure the question of what happened to us. We must bring the truth to fore, that it was a crime, that it's not so much we're looking for an apology, we're looking for a rectification of the crime. And so there we came here to press our case to the world that African people are not going to be denied the reality of our history and the compensation for the crime committed against us.
I had no idea how important it is for people who are not involved in the government to come and state their case, and how much of an impact that can have on the government. And that a few people can make a huge difference when it comes to international policies.
Delegates from 168 countries came to vote on various resolutions, some which ultimately would be included in the final UN declaration. These countries were assigned to regional groups: Western European and other, WEO, Asian and Pacific Island Group, Central European Group, African Group, and GRULAC, the group of Latin American and Caribbean countries. However, non-governmental organizations could not vote, but they were encouraged to hold a forum before and during the conference, and activists from around the world came to discuss their issues and develop an NGO position paper which would be presented to the World Conference. Long lines complicated the registration process, and conference passes were not always available, but the Durban 400 came too far to be discouraged, so they devised a plan to get around the confusion.
We'll break down into groups in a second, and then talk about how we deal with the passes and how we rotate people in and out. We have enough passes so that everybody should be able to get in there today. An hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, it depends upon when we get a final count of the passes. But everybody should be able to get in there today so that we can everybody can get a taste of what's going on in there. It's nothing magic. It's no different than what we do over here, except there's a higher concentration of delegates.
There was no such thing as a crime.
Prior to meeting with delegates from countries opposed to reparations, the Durban 400 held strategy workshops to clarify key points of contention.
I don't know if I know the answer. Will you answer it, Gilda? What is it? There was no crime called crime against humanity and slavery occurred. What's the answer?
Your retort to that would be, oh, absolutely, I know that is what happened and that's how that terminology came about. But just because there was no terminology available does not mean it did not occur.
What's the precedent for reparations? The one is the Japanese received reparations.
After internment in World War II.
The who?
After internment, after being in concentration camp in World War II.
The precedent that they all know about is the precedent of the people who were in concentration camps in Europe. And who worked as what they call slave labor in Europe. And that slave labor period lasted much shorter than the slave labor period of our ancestors in the United States.
Yes.
It cannot be jacked down.
Okay, well, the Jews, when they experienced the Holocaust, they got money from Germany. They got money from the countries in which enslaved them. The United States did not pay the Jews. Why do you want us to pay? We did not enslave you. All we did was allow for this to happen.
The United States government was
Why do you want us to pay now? That was hundreds of years ago.
Because you have benefited.
I didn't benefit.
You are continuing to benefit.
Inherited wealth. Lloyds of London benefited. Get your money from England.
And the economy of the United States
was built on the slave.
People who do not go to the ICC need to be lobbying on the outside of the ICC, okay? And the whole purpose of the pass is to get into the ICC. At 11:30, come back here, you'll get a pass and you'll go into the ICC, and at 1 o'clock, you'll come back here and summarize. Is that clear?
The largest governmental body of delegates at the conference was the Africa Group. They represented 48 countries, and as the conference got underway, the Durban 400 continued to develop their alliance with that group.
Initiative that you have taken in asking to come and meet with the African group should have come from us, and we should have that. And in that sense, I want to really extend to all of you a very warm thank and appreciation for actually reaching out to us, and this actually is also a beginning of a continuous road that we will walk together hand in hand.
We just wanted to reemphasize it, that when we go back, we will be meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus. They've already invited us. They have a meeting every September, Black Caucus weekend, where they discuss issues. They're going to do a summation of the World Conference. They've invited us to deal with that. We are going to talk about the firm stance that Africa has taken and whatever comes out of the final document. But we're also going to discuss with them the Zimbabwe Democracy Act, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, because it's an act that does not simply affect Zimbabwe, but also affects all Southern Africa, SADC in particular, but Africa in general, because it's an act that says that the United States can determine where democracy exists, apply sanctions until they've decided that democracy has been reestablished, and will provide money to the opposition and prevent support from international monetary organizations to countries that they've decided are on their hit list.
Thank you very much for the support and the activities and the work you've done on behalf of my government in our quest to get land, be given land to the people.
People should pay particular attention to Minister Shinamasa's speech. He's the Minister of Justice from Zimbabwe. We believe it was a powerful speech on one question. This attack on Zimbabwe, we believe, is a red herring.
The struggle against landlessness in Zimbabwe and in South Africa is part and parcel of the issue of reparations and colonialism. The Durban 400, the largest NGO at the conference, made this a central issue and held demonstrations and press conferences to make their position clear. However, there were those at the conference who wanted to shift the focus away from reparations.
Despite their tactics to split off African people against African people in their classic maneuvering of the process, the African people, the African group, are holding strong on our position.
What about the Caribbean?
We have support of some of the Caribbean countries. We have support of Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, and many other countries.
I have a question for you. If the Jewish people supported the civil rights movement in the United States stronger than any other community, why attack the Jewish community today?
I think that the question that you raised shows misinformation. Because you support one thing does not mean you're opposed to another. We say that what happened to the Jewish people was a crime against humanity. And the Jewish people have been vindicated. But you can never have total vindication if 6 million of your people are put in ovens by the Germans. We take the same position. We should never forget. As a matter of fact, we have learned much from the Jewish people and their strategy to prepare and to seek damages for what had happened to them. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So it is not because we support the people in Palestine to get their land back that we are opposed to Jewish people. That is not correct.
Don't you consider the Jewish community in the United States to be great supporters of the civil rights movement?
That has nothing to do with the issue.
Has nothing to do with the issue.
No. I'm on point. I like them. I'm definitely on point. So don't try to interrupt it. I want him to follow his line of thinking. Your line of thinking is that the Jewish people supported black people in the civil rights movement, and there was some parallels. This is a fact, this is true. But because we support the struggles of the Palestinian people, does not make us anti-Semitic. It does not make us opposed to Jewish people, and there's no parallel. So now I'll take other questions.
Whites invaded Zimbabwe. We know that Ian Smith subsequently declared himself independent even from Great Britain.
Well, why does that mean that an individual farmer who may have bought the land from another individual farmer doesn't have the right to farm that land?
Because in any jurisprudence that you cannot buy anything that was illegally seized in the U.S. If you do, you are aiding and abetting a crime.
Would you say that, so what role do you see then for whites in Zimbabwe?
The role I see for whites in Zimbabwe is to participate in the development of the country, is to continue, because there are whites in Zimbabwe who are in fact helping to develop the land. They cannot own 80% of the most arable land, and they represent maybe 5 to 10% of the population.
Or would you say that they could own 50% of the land?
I, as a person from the United States, could not say how much they should own. That is within the province of the land reform program of the Zimbabwean government.
By land reform, do you mean land seizure?
It's very interesting that BBC has never called the invasion of Zimbabwe, the seizure, the real seizure of land in Zimbabwe, seizure. It is only in 1998 and 99 when the Zimbabwean government says that we have to take back the land that was taken from us, that it becomes seizure.
What about the situation of the many thousands of black Zimbabwean farm workers who are now being thrown out of their jobs because of the seizure of the land?
Well, first of all, we have to establish fact from British media, so that I don't have the figures at my disposal. But as the British reporters have said in the New Africa magazine, that they print exactly what their editors demand, because if not, they would not have a job and would not be able to put their children through college.
So you're saying that no African workers who are on the farms now have been thrown out of their land, thrown out of their jobs by what the war veterans, the so-called war veterans?
We go from thousands of black workers being thrown off their land to my saying no workers are being thrown off their land. As I said when you asked the first trick question, that I here in South Africa do not have the facts at my disposal, but the Zimbabwean government does. But what I do deny, without fear of contradiction, that the BBC's reporting is so biased and so racist that in the New Africa magazine, the August edition, they admitted so.
So what would you like to see as a settlement of the whole land question? How do you see it being resolved?
I would like to see the British government and the United States government live up to their commitment they made at Lancaster. And that is that they would reimburse the farmers for the land, and that the Zimbabwean government would have to pay for whatever improvements that those farmers had made to the land. That's what I would like to see.
Canada's position basically is they do not support reparations being on the table. And as far as declaring the transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity, what they're also saying is that because of the time of slavery, the crime against humanity legal statute was not in place. Hence, it's not retroactive to the transatlantic slave trade.
The fact is that the African personality
African communism, African through Nkrumah. A whole host of peoples created those human rights standards. And now we're being told the laws don't exist. It doesn't matter if the laws don't exist, because actually we're looking at the biggest temporal rip in the space-time continuum of the development of African peoples. Nobody can replace it. And to that extent, regardless of what the formal governments may say, the argument is already won. All we're talking about is making the time and getting a strategy together to deliver the outcome, which is an apology, designated a crime against human rights with substantive reparations for the contemporary impacts of slavery. I'm the son, a great-great-grandson of a slave. I can't even tell you my family's history, much past the plantation in Jamaica. Now somebody somewhere is responsible for that, and I say designate a crime against humanity. Black people of the world, unite.
We go to say the reality is that this is things that you owe. And you owe them first and foremost because you're criminals.
Absent reparations, the perpetrators of the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, and other crimes against humanity will continue to be unjustly enriched by these crimes. The economic, social, and political development of these perpetrators is in large part due to the pillage, exploitation, brutalization, and murder of peoples in Africa, African descendants in the United States, in the diaspora, as well as other victims throughout the world. Absent reparations, the unjust enrichment will continue, fortified by structural and institutional racism, while victims will continue to be unjustly denied the benefits of their contributions to the world. We urge you to strike a blow to end racism by supporting reparations. We urge you to encourage your governmental delegates to the World Conference to set a deadline on the informal discussions being chaired by Brazil on this issue, and to allow the issue of reparations be sent to the drafting committees for inclusion in the declaration and program of action. I thank you.
The World Conference provided a unique opportunity for progressive activists to come together to have their voices heard in protest against injustices that occur in many places around the world.
March that we were planning to participate in at 5 o'clock to support the masses in South Africa against privatization, globalization, landlessness, homelessness, poverty, etc. is going on right now. There are thousands of people in the street.
Today we are still faced with a situation in South Africa where 13% of the entire population of about 40 million, 13% of 40 million controls 87% of the land. And 13%, 87% of the population is crammed into 13% of the entire land. So this is the position you are having in Zimbabwe and in South Africa currently. And we haven't moved much from that position. We have political power and freedom, but we don't have economical power in this country. So this is our position, and we are using every opportunity to demonstrate and to protest that we need full and whole freedom in this country.
We're at the NGO Convention Center. How far are they away from us? He said they won't get people in this area for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't want to disassemble
I think.
What do we want? Reparations. Was it a crime? Yeah.
Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Black power. Black power.
Now we're in the streets today, Durban, South Africa, to join the masses of the people in the tradition of the movement in the United States who supported the overthrow and dismantling of apartheid in South Africa. We are the free South African people in the streets in America. And we're joining the masses of the people.
Mali Mongwe, Kamala Makosi Chasi.
All right, security, 2 abreast. Line up, 2 abreast.
This protest march, organized by COSATU, the Coalition of South African Trade Unions, invited the Durban 400 to participate in a show of solidarity in the largest mass demonstration in South Africa since the release of Nelson Mandela. And on this warm August day, tens of thousands of people marched in the streets of Durban, South Africa, against racism, privatization, globalization, landlessness, and homelessness. These issues were reflected in the signs, in the chants, and in the toy-toy, a jubilant form of protest dance that characterized the South African anti-apartheid struggle.
The wealth of whites in Africa has been built on stolen land. And so we believe that the resolution of these questions in Africa are tied to one. Land is the basis of everything. It's where people live. It's where crops grow. It's where minerals exist.
Many issues were presented at this conference, and the NGO Forum, not able to vote on resolutions, was promised their discussions would have some influence over the final outcome. However, the goal of the Durban 400 was to stay focused on the issue of reparations, and their key strategy was to concentrate on the UN Forum, where government representatives were in attendance and where their lobbying efforts would have maximum impact.
The African and African Descendants Caucus, of which the December 12th movement, particularly under the leadership of Attorney Wareham, was very much part of unifying the African community around the position initiated by the December 12th movement, and that caucus has continued its work. But for the purposes of what we're doing, all of us can't go to those meetings, which are important. We are represented in the African and African Descendants Caucus by Dr. Crawford and a few others. Our work is over here, so let's not get confused and feel guilty. We are very much a part and continue to support that caucus, but our work is over here, and we have representatives over there.
On September 3rd, 2001, at Africa University, the United States delegation scheduled a briefing. They were going to give an update of the conference to the U.S. NGOs, but instead they announced their withdrawal from the conference. However, the Durban 400 had plans to conduct their own briefing and staged a demonstration to protest the United States government's refusal to address the issue of reparations. This action shocked some and inspired others.
What's coming? War! What's coming? War! How we gonna win? How we gonna do it? Reparations now! Reparations now! Reparations now! Reparations now! Reparations now! What do we want? Reparations! When do we want it? Now! 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 So now we should have the U.S. briefing. It will set the basis for a tribunal. The tribunal will have the perpetrators and the victims. And out of that tribunal will come rectification, which is compensation. Because this was all about economic exploitation and underdevelopment. We're not stupid. The slaves read, the slaves analyze, and the slaves fight for their freedom. So this conference belongs to African people on whose backs this was built.
That's right.
This is not about xenophobia, because the basis of xenophobia is in fact the question of meager means divided among the poor, while rich people sit back and divide the world. Racism is the issue, and it's economic, but it was based on the most gross crime against humanity in the history. We don't need any other precedents. There is no precedent for 50 million bones on the Atlantic Ocean. There is no precedent for millions of people who are in fact nationless, supposedly without a culture. We are the precedent for this issue. That's right. And we're not gonna back down. That's right. We're not gonna be diverted by people who inject issues that are not the real issues. The West must pay for their crime. Belgium, the United States, the continuation of those crimes equal right up to today. Corporations, financial institutions whose backs were built on ours, still have us enslaved. Slavery continues as a basis of our underdevelopment. It is not because white people are superior, it is because we have been underdeveloped by a criminal act. And we're going to resolve that issue here. Then we're going forward because reparations has gripped the entire world. Inequality cannot be based on ideological feelings. It is based on economic deprivation. That's right. And we're going to move on that, brothers and sisters. And we believe that those are the issues of the World Conference Against Racism. If we lose that focus, then we will talk many things and accomplish nothing. Let us not lose, as my brother from Chicago says, let's not lose our focus. It was a crime. Was it a crime? Yes! Was it a crime? Yes! Against who? Humanity! So what do you want? Reparations! That ain't deep, it's real simple. Was it a crime? Yes! Against who? Humanity! So what do you want? Reparations! So what do you want? Reparations! And when do you want it? Now! So when do you want it? Now! Straight ahead. Straight ahead.
About 5:30, we met with the State Department representatives, Howard Burlow, Steve Wagensall, and on behalf of Mike Southwick, they told us that they were withdrawing from this World Conference. They told us point blank that they will not do anything to participate in any of the drafting of documents at this point. So I think it's pointless for you all to meet with them because I don't know how if their position will change within that time.
We have an opening of what to still vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor of not meeting with the U.S. government, say so.
Aye. Aye.
All those who want to prefer to meet with the U.S. government, raise your hand. Aye. No hand.
So we need to strategize on how we are going to communicate a clear message to the people at home, not only about the conference, but also how we're going to go home and strategize, educate about reparations and our long-term strategies post-Durban that we need to focus on. And we need to be together and come together on a strategy to do that while we're all gathered here together.
My name is Dorothy Lewis. I'm the national co-chair in COBRA. I think we should congratulate the U.S. government for doing the only principled thing that it has ever done. And it is a conflict of interest for the criminal to sit at the table. No criminal sits at the table to decide whether or not they should be held accountable for 400 years of wrongdoing, genocide, and continuing crime. So, and we should call upon the international community and African governments to not sell us out again to the highest bidder.
I
would suggest that we put together our own delegation and have that delegation take the seats that the U.S. government is abandoning.
I'm just concerned that if the U.S. White House is going to announce tonight in 1 hour that we should have some presence on the streets tonight, as well as tomorrow morning.
When I left, the U.S. delegation was at the top of the stairs coming in. When I got over here, the people who did South African television this morning said there's something breaking right now. It sounds like the U.S. delegation is pulling out. We went in to do the interview, then word had come. We had already seen a press statement from the South African government on their response to this, because the understanding was that they were going to pull out, and in fact, there might be 40 other countries that might pull out with them. We went down and we took over and created the real U.S. briefing. We didn't need the U.S. government for a briefing to tell us what they were not going to get down with anyway. No illusions, as Emil Cabral said, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. The United States was never going to get down with this. They came in, never situated themselves, low-key, dramatic exit. All staged. During the course of stuff, they never took over any working group because they didn't want the embarrassment of dropping their work when they split. So when they got here, the plan was already in motion to split. Maybe the Durban 400 helped get their asses out of Taos. So tomorrow, we have more work to do.
Yes, sir.
And that work has to be, now that the shoe has fell, an assessment of what's happened. Tonight, you know, the enemy is already into plan 2, because this was all orchestrated. They now are probably trying to put pressure, particularly on people, to drop out too, to say that this conference is not legitimate. They've done it before. Our role is to deepen our solidarity without the enemy in our camp.
A white lady came out and said, "You were magnificent, sir. What is your name?" She was from New York, little white lady. She says, "You have convinced me that what African Americans are demanding is correct." This white woman, and she was with her brother, and he was kind of scared. And he ran off. I mean, you know, we're gaining support in Britain. We've been all over Europe, talking on the BBC, 3 or 4 different stations, and so we're winning support because we're on the ground, we're collective, we're studying, we understand the trend, but we can't lose sight of the real war.
Today is a resounding victory for African people because the African group decided and were able to work out differences amongst themselves such that they will include reparations in the document. This is a major victory for African people, not only in terms of this conference, but in terms of future of our people, where we have finally forged the type of unified struggle against imperialism and against the European countries that have benefited from the exploitation and rape of our people and our country and our land.
Did people hear the Africa Group's final statement?
No.
Could you give it to us? The World Conference recognizes that slavery, the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, apartheid, and genocide constitute crimes against humanity.
Black power.
And our major historical sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance.
Yeah, that's right.
And that Africans and peoples of African descent and peoples of Asian descent and indigenous peoples have been and continue to be victims of these acts and their consequences. Did we win?
Wait a minute, can I run it off for the people?
Once the United States delegation left the conference, Belgium was asked to fill in and continue their work. The Durban 400 found this disturbing because during the 19th century, under King Leopold II, the Belgians' lust for the natural resources of the Congo, which is reported to have the most natural wealth of any country on the planet, resulted in the vile practice of mutilating the Congolese. And during the 1960s, the governments of Belgium and the United States conspired in the murder of Congo's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, and the overthrow of his democratically elected government.
The other thing we have to have for tomorrow, comrade, is the indictment against Belgium for the killing of Patrice Lumumba.
Right.
Everybody's coming up to us saying, are you all gonna stop Belgium? Because Belgium has stepped into the U.S.'s shoes and running the most oppressive, racist stuff they can run. So the only way in which we stop Belgium is we indict them for Patrice Lumumba's murder.
Belgium is one of the most dangerous countries in the history of Africa as far as how that small country has played a role in the devastation of Africa. We have to remember that that Belgium has been the seat of NATO for many years, and that it has also now become the home of the European Union. Belgium sees itself as the heart of Africa, as it's proclaimed in its national airport. And yet, when we talk about the Congo, its role in the Congo has been one of nothing but pillage and plunder, murder and mayhem.
In Congo, the Belgians who colonized us were asking the native people there to collect a certain amount of rubber each day. If they were not able to collect that amount of rubber, then the Belgians will cut off their arms. With the money that was made from the rubber, they built an arch in Brussels called the Royal Palace. We are saying that this money should have come back to Africa, and we call that arch the Arch of Cut Arms. They cut the arms of Congolese, and this money was used to build Belgium. So Belgium now must recognize that this is a crime against humanity. I'm talking about Belgians because they are the ones who colonized Congo.
This has been a paper fight, a language fight, a 6-year fight that was initiated by attorney Roger Wareham of the December 12th movement to get one very important sentence into the final UN declaration. This battle has been won, and the United Nations Declaration now serves as a catalyst in the continuing struggle for restitution for some of the greatest crimes against humanity in world history.
France has taken a position that they agree with their parliament that the transatlantic slave trade is a crime against humanity. But to this point, the European Union is presenting a solid front. One person speaks for them, they're not breaking rank in terms of positions they're taking around the document. The South Africans proposed a compromise document that has something from the document that the Europeans put out, something from the document the Africans put out, and it's a basis for discussion. But what we want to emphasize when we're talking with our contacts is that people need to adhere to the document that was originally put out by the African group days ago. When we deal with our regional groupings, it's the same thing. When you talk with your other countries, you want to emphasize that they should protest any of this stretching out, blocking, parliamentary Roberts rules blocking that is going on in that group that's dealing with the past, transatlantic slave trade, reparations, all those kind of things. So our work continues. We're not at any point where we can rest on our laurels. We can see the positive effects of what we've already done. We gotta see it through to the end. This is going to go down to the last minute.
You should know that our issues has been negotiated right now, and we are concerned that the languages of reparation and crime against humanity, the European Union, they're pushing to eliminate it, to change the concept. This is information we have received this evening. So we want them to know that we are here. We want them to know that we would not compromise on these two issues. And we want them to know that we're going to stand in solidarity of all the victims that are here. And together, we're going to demand they respect our will. So that's what the march is about. It's about unity at the beginning of the anti-global racial movement.
We don't have enough time, that's why I want to give the floor directly, immediately to Mrs. Viola Piano, who is the chairperson of December 12th movement.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is indeed an honor for us to meet and discuss with you some very critical issues for Africans here on the continent and Africans throughout the diaspora. We are appreciative of your time. We understand the dynamics of the discussions that are going on and have gone on to this point. So we'll get right to the meat of our concerns. In the press release that was just read, I am sure one of our concerns would be, what does it mean where it says that we will provide reparations to countries and peoples concerned? We are not clear on what that phrase means.
The World Conference recognizes that slavery, the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, apartheid, and genocide, constitutes crimes against humanity and are major historical sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and that Africans and peoples of African descent and peoples of Asian descent and indigenous peoples have been and continue to be victims of these acts and their consequences. So the people concerned are defined in this first paragraph, which is the first paragraph of the African Common Position. So when you read paragraph 4, when you refer to providing reparations to countries and peoples concerned, you should read it in connection with paragraph 1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The issues that were of concern to a lot of my brothers and sisters in the United States, such as the issue of the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, apartheid and genocide, we in the Africa group have now considered them as crimes against humanity.
Well, we're just waiting. There's negotiations going on the document, on the language. The Africa group, ULAC, are trying to negotiate to see if they can agree to what they think should be the language. And we just we don't know for sure what the issues are at this point.
The Latin American Caucus has now agreed to take out of their document that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity and reparations. And so the Caribbean Caucus has said that they were not consulted, that's not their position, so they have to withdraw from that caucus. I think it reinforced their position that the Africa group has taken, and that very strongly they endorse the issue that the transatlantic slave trade, genocide, apartheid, and colonialism were crimes against humanity and should in fact be in the final document.
Many people are new to this movement. Many people have not heard about it, or they've heard about it and they've been discouraged from participating in it because they didn't feel that we could win. But they're seeing now that this is coming before the world. And so we ask them for their support, for their involvement, for their leadership, for the sharing of their resources so that we can all be victorious in this fight.
When I was talking to a lot of the ministers as well as the delegations from the African countries, it seemed that they had a new resilience to stand for our humanity as African people. And that made me very, 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 very proud.
Around the question of reparations, some of us have been
organizing for 10, 12 years around reparations, and to see it now at this level, and to be able to go back and let people understand it's an international issue now. We have allies everywhere. Ought to fuel us and motivate. I know it's motivated me and educated me to go back and do more work on the ground for another decade, if the Creator gives me that much life, to make sure that we take it to another level in the next 10 years.
I have participated here lobbying. I have interviewed people from about 10 different Latin countries where most of us don't know that there is 150 million blacks in Latin America. And especially Colombia. In Colombia alone, there are 15 millions, and I have participated in their meetings. We are meeting daily. I have been in contact with New York daily, and there has been almost no media coverage of this conference and the results.
We have to get on the other side, which is back to the U.S. and to our respective local communities, and try to break this down to our communities and to get ourselves organized and to continue to function, and to also put pressure where pressure is due and not lose sight of the focus.
Day 6 of the World Conference Against Racism is moving as slowly as we had anticipated. I think we've had some major successes. One is that our intention was to expose to the world that the United States disregards the opinion of other countries in the world, and they also refuse to accept responsibility for their part in the transatlantic slave trade. Our victory is that we have firmly placed that on the agenda. Our second victory is that we have forced the perpetrators of that crime to cowardly walk out of the conference. I think the other accomplishment is the networking and unity of African people throughout the world, from every continent, who have clearly stated that the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, indeed, are crimes against humanity. Day 7 will be a continuation of negotiations on what's called critical issues, like the transatlantic slave trade, like the issue of reparations, like the issue in the Middle East. When those issues come up, they're critical issues, and every parliamentary trick in the book is pulled by the West. We expect that to continue. Day 8, we might see a final draft. At the end of the conference, we might see a final draft. Our expectations is, though, that they cannot not come out of the conference with a draft declaration. The content is going to be something we've got to pay particular attention to and be extremely vigilant on, but expect the worst, but never give up the fight for the best. We hope that after Durban, that post-Durban will be the declaration, so that throughout the world we are going to attempt to organize millions for reparations and millions to conclude that the transatlantic slave trade is a crime against humanity, that colonialism is a crime against humanity, that apartheid a crime against humanity, that the Belgium's brutalization of the Congo, the brutal killing of Patrice Lumumba, is in fact one of the horrors of colonialism that has never been addressed, but that we will continue to push to have it addressed.
against the storm. None need in the clutch for power. None need in the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in my number as we stand against tyranny. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, no, no, you rest, no, no. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it's won.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the program today. Quite disturbed. Reason being, realizing so many of my friends and elders who are not here now, such as one of my teachers, Elambe Brath, Ibae, may the Creator be pleased. Queen Mother Viola Plummer, featured prominently, correctly so, in this document by may the Creator be pleased. My roommate as a delegate in Durban, South Africa, Eddie Ellis, who did groundbreaking research on the number of Africans kidnapped from zip codes, 7 zip codes in New York City, supplying something like, I don't know, 80, 85% of the population upstate, bringing forth the language of formerly enslaved, formerly incarcerated persons opposed to felons or former criminals. My dear friend Ibrahim Clayton Raymond Mweed, he also a delegate. Montu Masamela, by may the Creator be pleased. Guild Ali, Sharad Ali, a good friend, and she was a co-chair with.
Here I am. Here I am. Here I am.
Thank you, Roger. A co-chair of NCOBRA's Peoplehood Litigation Committee, who is now in the spirit world. And certainly Dorothy Lewis, who was the female co-chair of NCOBRA at the time. I was the international co-chair of the International Commission with Mashariki Iwanja, who also was in the spirit world. So I'm saddened by the fact they're not here with us to celebrate this victory and not see how that work that was done then there in Durban, South Africa, has resulted in the movements that have continued since that time. So many points I can speak of, but I'm not going to do that at this point. I will say, however, that my love, my respect, my brotherhood with Roger Warham, I can say is in place. He and I are still here. Many of those who were in Durban, South Africa are here as well. And I'm so glad to have the nephew of Imari Obadeli, Maynard Henry, with us, participating in this event today. So Roger sent me his bio. I'm not going to read it because I can send it out to folks, but I really want to hear from him. We were so happy to get his consent to end our activities today. As you know, Roger was also prominently shown in the film because his work, it just mirrors the work that he's been doing for at least 50 years. This closing event, Durban 400, the December 12th movement, the current, oh man, look at that picture, y'all. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
right. Maury.
Oh, wow.
Is
Wow.
that Maynard on his right? On his left?
On his left, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Thank you for showing that picture.
And Dorothy on the left.
And that's Dorothy, okay. So this current event, the current and future state of international reparations justice movement for repair and restitution, affirming the right to development. So often when we think of the work that Malcolm has provided for us, his point of view, uh, but too often we only have an elementary understanding of what he was saying and what he meant. He was talking about not only the right of self-determination, but he was talking about the right of development as a people, as a nation. And we still haven't fully embraced that yet. And that's the struggle that we are engaging in with our people, to let them know that those reverends that came together in 1865 with Tecumseh Sherman, and from that came Special Order 15, the first thing they said was land. We want land, and we want the ability to work that land for our sustenance. But they also know they needed protection from those races. And we also know that after Lincoln was assassinated, Johnson who came in and reversed everything. They was clear. I'm talking about 1865. Our people was very clear on the question of land. And it wasn't by accident that land was spoken prominently in the film in terms of Zimbabwe. It always is about land. But we have to tie the land to our peoplehood, our right to exist. So even though ethnocide didn't get into the United Nations document on genocide, the owner or the author, Limpkin, said there's another key point, ethnocide. That is what the killing of a people and their culture. We have suffered this great tragedy of the ontological breach, how we understand ourselves and how we relate to each other. Our social ecology has been thwarted, has been undermined, and in those relationships with each other is our life. That's why we say Ubuntu. A person becomes a person through other people. And this is the struggle that we are now. So without any further ado, let me say that I'm just so honored to be in this space with my dear friend Roger Wareham, and let him take the floor on the question of the current and future state of international reparations justice movement for repair and restitution. My dear brother, Roger.
Okay, well, after that kind of introduction, I don't know what to say, but I'll say some few words, and then I think we can discuss it. I think that the resolution that was passed by the General Assembly at the behest of the African and a tremendous affirmation of what Durban represented. So you could really see its foundation being laid when you look at the Durban 400, because that was when we say it's a victory, that was a victory in both content and process. Content, with the language that came out, which was for the first time some acknowledgement that the transatlantic slave trade and slavery were crimes against humanity, even though it was couched in lawyerly terms that might give them an out, but that was the first acknowledgement of that, and a victory because it was a collaboration between Africans in the diaspora who came from different parts of the world and spoke different languages, but came together and agreed that, you know what, we're going to push this agenda, this 3-point agenda around Declaration of Transatlantic Slave Trade, economic basis of racism, which speaks to what's now being more popularly called racial capitalism. And so there was a whole society side, non-governmental side, but then it got carried over into the work with the governments, which actually had to secure the passage of the Durban Declaration, which was a consensus document. It meant that everybody there agreed with it. Even if they didn't vote against. There wasn't a vote. It was adopted by consensus, and the fact of its significance was demonstrated by the position of the Western European group. I mean, the U.S. had walked out, the U.S. and Israel had walked out, but the rest of the Western European group and other group had remained, and they had gone along with the consensus. And the very next day, they started to backtrack. They wanted to have a relook at it, which is unprecedented. But the conference was over, and they were stuck with it. So then their history since then has been, how do we just sort of pretend that it didn't happen? How do we disappear it? How do we undermine it? And so we've seen different manifestations of that over the past 25 years. So that, and I think without Durban, we couldn't have had the March resolution that came out of there. And so I think the state of the international reparations movement, in one sense, is good because it's strong, but in another sense, we're fighting for it under ever more unfavorable conditions. We know in the U.S. we got an administration that just wants to disappear Black folks, much less talk about reparations. Back in 20, when Biden was elected, we had started a campaign around demanding that he issue an executive order for a $50 billion down payment on reparations, which was something that he could do. And he had talked about how thankful he was to Black people for securing or making his election possible. It couldn't happen without Black folks. So we said, let's put the pressure on, but we weren't able to mobilize enough of a mass campaign for that to happen. So now we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge Black people. So we're conducting this under more difficult conditions. So our task is, how do we get our people to see on a mass level that their day-to-day existence is tied to this struggle for reparations, that this is not something off on the side that's somebody else's responsibility, but to begin to tie that demand. And I think mentioning Malcolm is appropriate because Malcolm was a genius at taking concept and breaking it down to people so that they can see, oh, that's why I need to get down with this. So one of the things that we're talking about, a couple of things. One, there is this coming week, there's a follow-up conference or consultation, whatever, in Ghana. That's supposed to be the next steps. It's supposed to be a gathering of people to discuss how to implement the UN resolution, because UN resolutions on their own they're on paper, just like Durban was on paper. And even the paper was so fearsome to them that they wanted to make it go away. But now there's a UN resolution that 2/3 of the UN countries have passed. So this gathering in Ghana on the 17th, 18th, and 19th is supposed to work out what are the next steps to go forward with this. We're sending 2 people over there from December 12th movement. Our concern is that the alliance between the African group, the AU, and CARICOM is very important, but the majority of the African diaspora reside in countries that don't represent our interests and are opposed to our interests and certainly in the U.S. are opposed to reparations. So what we want to do at that gathering is to ensure that the Africans in the diaspora who are not represented by AU and CARICOM have some voice at that table as they work out the plans that they want to implement in terms of next steps. My understanding at this point is that their plan is to have 3 councils. One is an advisory, a high-level advisory council. One is a council to deal with return of artifacts, and a third is a legal one. And I don't know if if Maynard's involved in, aware of involved in any of those. But that's what's on the agenda. We've got to, I think the lesson from Durban is that if civil society is organized, it can pressure states to reflect the interests of the civil society. And I think from that lesson, that gives us an impetus in terms of how we move forward. One of the plans that we're working on now, we've been working on, is to celebrate August 29th as the 25th anniversary of Durban, because that was around the time that the conference began. And what we're asking folks in different parts of the country is on that day to have something, a rally, a demonstration, a meeting, something to commemorate what Durban represented. And since our campaign began, since the African Group Resolution was passed, to understand what that means and how it pushes forward what we're trying to do. So that's what we see as some of the concrete steps that have to be taken. Nothing goes forward without mass motion. And as Frederick Douglass always said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. And I think if we don't understand those lessons, then we're going to just be shouting into the wind. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Roger. Please put in the chat the way in which contributions can be made to those individuals who are going to Ghana.
Okay.
So we can support that.
Yeah.
We know that liberation nor freedom is free, and it's only through this level of Ujima, collective work and responsibility, of Ujima, cooperative economics, that we've been able to participate in all of this. Roger has gone continuously, I don't know, it's beyond, it's maybe beyond the ability to count, but much of that has been his own personal contributions to our people and to our struggle. So we need to increase the number of people involved in our struggle, and we need to increase the number of financial support for those making these trips on our behalf. So please put that in the chat. I'd like to ask you, Roger, how now with this declaration from the UN, how does that correlate? How does it connect to the second decade for people of African descent? We had the first one from 2015 to 2024. Now we're in the second decade from the 25 to 35. How do those two things relate? And even, let's say, also tie in the presence of the new, what's it called, the permanent forum for people of African descent. How do those three things relate to one another?
That is a very good and interesting question. The decade, in terms of the history, the decade of people of African descent, the first one came out of that we struggled within the UN for the first to be an international year for people of African descent, and I believe that was 2011. And then after that, we struggled for a first decade. And the theme of the first decade was recognition, justice, development. That's what I think those are the three themes. Because what we had wanted it to be was reparations, justice, development. But that wasn't going to get through the Western European and other group. So it was recognition, justice, and development. So it's the second decade has to continue that. The second decade, at least, creates the external conditions for us to continue to carry out activities that show the connection between the different ways in which African people are affected and the struggle for reparations. The permanent forum is also very interesting because when the permanent forum was set up, and when we started going to the UN back in 1989, the UN had just set up a permanent forum for indigenous peoples. And so while we were in the UN, we pushed for that. This should be a permanent forum for African people, for people of African descent. And so that was finally set up about 5 years ago. Interestingly enough, the US and Canada, who were two of the big opponents to the Durban Declaration, became very heavily involved in terms of supporting the permanent forum of people of African descent. They kept pushing it, talked about and tried to organize forces inside of it that would then begin to try and implement or address the reparations issue in a way that had nothing to do, as if it was being started from scratch, as if it had nothing to do with Durban and what Durban represented. I think that to an extent that has been curbed in the last couple of years, but I think we just have to, our participation in that body has got to ensure that our history is recognized and continued, and then for that to be a way to implement the African Group resolution. So I think there's a connection there, but I think with every international body, there's got to be constant surveillance, scrutiny, critique. One of the things that we always do when we go to international meetings is come back and have a meeting with the community to lay out, this is what happened, this is what we think it was accomplished, this is what we think didn't, what do people think, so that our involvement in the international community isn't like a lone star. It really involves discussion with the community. So we've already set up plans for on June 24th to have a report back, and it'll be hybrid, in person and online, on what comes out of this meeting next week in Accra. I think the other thing I want to say is that another part of I think it's part of the resolution, is that Africa has declared, I think 2025 to 2036 or 2026 to 2035 as a decade of reparations. So there's a lot of momentum that's building. We just have to ensure that we can participate in it, that our voices are heard in that motion.
Phenomenal. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask Professor Jones, Nikki Jones, to ask any questions that she may have. And then after that, I'd like to ask my dear brother Maynard Henry to also ask our guest speaker any questions, and then I'll open the floor for anyone else. Dr. Jones? I know she had to step away for a very urgent call, so maybe she's not back. So I'm going to go ahead to my dear brother Maynard. All right. So he has a matter to attend to as well. So they may be coming back to ask any questions they have, but so I'll open the floor up to our guests. Please raise your hand so I can recognize you. All right. So, Brother Joseph Delmas, welcome. Glad that you're here. Please tell us who you are. If you happen to be a representative of an organization, state that, and please let us know, how did you come to this particular event today?
Blessings, everyone. I first want to extend my gratitude and thank you for this invitation. My name is Joseph Delmas. I'm 33. I'm currently in Central Jersey. I'm currently with the organization called Birth Justice Institute, which is a around the reproductive justice space, maternal health. I was invited to this event last night through the Luxor Collective that Omari Maynard held. So I'm not a representative. However, I just want to formally thank you all for the work, the profound work that you're doing. You know, and I look forward to, being a ally and to fight the fight. Because this is a I believe a topic, something that is overlooked, amongst our community. And I feel like more people, young people, should be fighting alongside this fight. So I appreciate you all for the work. When I was watching the video, I saw the faces, especially like in the younger years. So that was that was testimony to show how long you all have been in action, and I want to say that what 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 you're doing will not go in vain. It won't. And I just want to be an ally. I appreciate it.
Joseph, thank you so very much. And you bring to the discussion, I think, the most essential point, and that is if we don't have Black babies, we won't have Black life. And the fact that Black women are dying at astronomical levels, where the CDC said that 86% of those deaths were preventable. That is genocide.
Absolutely.
That is genocide.
It
So
is.
for bringing that into the conversation, thank you. And I would ask everyone to put their email into the chat so we have a way of being back in touch with you so we can keep this communication going. Joseph, thank you so very much for who you are, what you do, and being
Thank you. I
here.
appreciate it.
The floor is open.
I just wanted to add that I think that the area he's dealing with, Black maternal health care, is like so crucial that and it's one of those issues that can get tied to reparations in terms of not only the mistreatment that Black women get, mistreatment and disrespect. And I always think of the thing with what's her name, the tennis player, how she almost lost her life during giving birth because they wouldn't get past their stereotypes of the degree of pain and so I think and one of the issues that we've always tried to tie the question of reparations to is the question of healthcare. That's something that's crucial to all of us. It's harder sometimes with young people because when you're young, you think you're going to live forever, or you're not gonna experience health problems. But certainly, the question of how do we protect Black women and Black children in terms of, I think that's a really good. I'm glad that you're doing that work, and like I agree with Naji. We just everybody put in their email addresses so we can maintain contact.
The floor is open. I'd like to ask, has Maynard or Dr. Jones, have either one of you or both of you, have you come back to the screen yet?
Yes, I've been here for a while. I walked away briefly. I think I heard the tail end of what you were saying about folks not being here, and walked away. So yeah, I'm here.
Right. The question, you might have been away. I invited you to ask Roger any questions or comments that you might want to make as a result of his presentation.
Brother Roger, thank you for your work that you've been doing. It certainly contributed to the work that we produced in the social work literature, and I'm very grateful for you sharing your time with us this morning. So appreciate you. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Maynard,
I'm sorry,
Roger.
No, go on.
Sure. I'd like to then Maynard to ask any questions or comments that he may, or reflections that he may have.
Sure. First, Roger, appreciate the very concise and cohesive presentation today. And every time I watch the documentary, I learn something new. And so it's good to be able to see this repetitively. You pose a interesting question. How do we get our people involved on a mass level? Because the reparations process does affect us on a daily basis, from healthcare to the mass incarceration, financially, home lending and purchasing, and every aspect of our life. And one of the things that I was thinking about the other day when you asked that question is the very thing that, as I look around and talk to different new Africans, it, we need to have some sort of campaign where we really can educate our people from the older generation down to the youngest generation as to really the plight of our people. And what I find unique is I talk to even people that are in their 80s, and they still don't, although they've lived through the Jim Crow and are second generation removed from their ancestors of being enslaved, there's still a disconnect between what we're trying to do today with the reparations movement and the things that our ancestors went through during chattel slavery and through the Jim Crow period, even though some lived through it. And so there's a disconnect somewhere. But I understand that disconnect because part of the whole process of chattel slavery on up through the present has been intentional by the colonizers uh, to miseducate. And the COINTEL program is probably in, not 2.0, but it's probably 20.0 now. And we don't realize just how subtle the miseducation of our people are still going on. And that's, and you saw that as you go back through the documentary, all the different opinions within the diaspora as to this issue of reparations. They don't know what's at work there. They really, our people really don't know what's at play as far as the disinformation, misinformation, and the lack of where we need to be as a unified people. So you bring up something very important, something that Dr. Najee said when he gave your introduction, and we talk about and he talked about the assassination of Lincoln. One of the things we don't also realize, that was a coup. That was really the first coup, not Trump, but that was a coup. And so when we as new Africans were given land and it was taken away after that coup, it always begs the question, because I had this discussion the day before we got on this call, is that new Africans received land, but we're receiving stolen land from our indigenous brothers and sisters. And the question has always been, and Amari raised it always, is how do we share that land with our brothers and sisters, our indigenous brothers and sisters, because it was their land before it was given to us, particularly those five subjugated states that we want to call our nation, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. And so all this comes into play. The DDPA is such a complex piece of work as it involves nationhood, nation building, and solidifying the diaspora. I know I've said a whole lot there, but this reparations thing and the international aspect of it that was raised from the permanent forum and things of that sort, we have to somehow solidify what we're going to do as a people, as a diaspora, as to how we're going to win the war. I yield.
Thank you, Maynard. That is excellent, and it really, I think, it invites us to go back again and again and again to study that document, because it was the film, because there were so many points. One point, it was Adjoa Otello who brought up the statement of unjust enrichment, right? The vocabulary we usually say is white privilege. It's not white privilege. What it is legally is unjust enrichment. So we
It's
need
theft. It's theft.
it's theft. Yes, it's even more basic than that. So we need to educate our people to these terms, to these conditions. Another thing that was really interesting was the uh, the back and forth with I think it was Queen Mother Viola when the interviewer was asking her a question, and first he wants to say the word was in terms of Zimbabwe, they use the word theft, not theft of land. I'm trying to find it on my notes. She used the word. The interviewer used the word. Um, like confiscation, right? And it was the only time they used the word was when they was referring to the Africans and not to the original
Right.
folks who were stealing the land, right? And then he goes to another trick question by saying, well, what do you mean? You know, all these Africans are going to lose their jobs, right? So I mean, it was just classical in terms of his thinking and her response. So in the document, there's so many things to pull from and create almost like a listening guide and questions and answers to our people. So we can use that the same way that we can use the first meeting in March 28th, 2024, when Nikki had us and some other people on the panel. This so we can go back to those events, to those recordings, and pull stuff out. That's how we get the multiplier effect of not only having the event in the first instance, but analyzing it and then being able to discuss it with our family and relatives in the second instance. That's how the movement grows, by having political education. And I wouldn't want to leave today without mentioning Mutulu Shakur. Dr. Mutulu Shakur was a revolutionary, and he spent so much time looking at the question of health because his mother was blind and he had to intersect with all the different human resources and seeing how, how slanted it was and how unfair it was. And from that, he became a doctor in acupuncture. One of the projects that Encobra is launching is Millions for Mutulu, which means how do we get 1 million people to study acupuncture, and if not acupuncture, at least acupressure with the 5 points, the auricula. His colleague, one of his brothers, is now creating a course for us to actually learn not only the 5 points, but he wants to teach us like 25 points of how we can actually take health into our own uh, self-determination, self-determination. So we're about to close. It's now 12:52. We have another 8 minutes to close out. I would like to open the floor for any other comments or questions. Leon, so glad that you're here. Would love for you to come on screen, tell us who you are, how you got here, and what your questions or your comment might be as a result of participating in this historical event. Brother Leon.
Yes, like I said, I'm Leon Dixon with the Kansas City Reparations Coalition and also the National Black United Front.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've been interested in internal reparations. See, we were taken away from our culture, our community, and our consciousness. And we need to revamp and get all of that back. Because if we get external reparations without internal reparations, all we're going to do is give it away. And so we need to know who we are and where we came from. And so, like I often point out, there is no beginning to Black history. As far back as you go, we there. I wrote an article called about the Great Circle. It's on the internet. And if you take a top and spin it, it wobbles while it spins. The Earth is spinning around this axis too, and it wobbles. To complete that wobble is 26,000 years. Now, how long you got to be around to figure that out? How wise and intelligent you have to be to figure that out? And astronomy It's science. Astrology is myth. Because astrology is myth based on the great year. It's in that article I wrote, and I don't want to keep going on and on, but that article points out like 26,000 years, how long you got to be around to figure that out? I did some calculations. Most people don't live to be 100, but 100 is to 26,000 what 5.5 minutes is to a day. It's in that article. Now, if you only live 5.5 minutes, how long is it going to take you to figure out night and day? But our ancestors had to be intelligent and wise to know all of that and figure all that stuff out. But when you study world history in high school and college, you go back 10, maybe 20,000 BC and come up to the present. Humankind been around much longer than that. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands, some say millions of years. So I'm going to pass on that.
Elder Leon, can you put your email in the chat? I would definitely want to not only be with you, but I want to recruit you to join NCOBRA's Health Commission, where you can bring that information forward. For the audience, let me say that NCOBRA, the Health Commission, launched what is called a Year to Heal. It's been more than a year, and we went through, for those of you who weren't at the beginning, I talked about 5 minimum harm areas. Peoplehood and nationhood is 1, education is 2, criminal justice is 3, wealth and poverty is 4, and health is 5. We went through the first 4 already, and we haven't set the calendar for the last area, health, and of course that's going to generate the agenda that we're going to go forward for this year and for next year. But I'd like to invite everyone to participate in that as well. I'm grateful for all of you for being here. You have made history in saying that this is an important topic. Many other people couldn't come, probably more so because of logistics rather than not a lack of interest. But the mere fact that we have it recorded means that you'll be able to not only view it again, but you'll be able to share it with your friends and with the organizations that you're a part of. So it's now 12:56. And I'm going to open the general floor for anyone to speak, and then I'm going to reserve the last comments for Roger and for Professor Jones. Anyone has any lasting comments, final comments you'd like to make at this point? With that not being responded to, Roger, anything that you would like to say? And I want to remind everyone in the chat is the wwd12m.com website, but also Cash App $HTFLH as
Harriet
where.
Tubman Fannie Lou Hamer.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, okay. How we can contribute, right? To our own, we're not contributing to them. We're contributing to our own liberation. Let's be clear about that. That's what we're doing. We're funding our own liberation. So, Roger, any last words or
just
comments?
a couple of comments. The thing you raised around the funding is one of the. You're right. We've always self-funded. We took 400 people to Durban. Everybody who went, they got up off their money themselves. There was no foundations. There was no grants or anything. It was just people doing what needed to be done. So yeah, we would certainly could use any help with that. I thought that Dr. Maynard's point around mind control, I think that's important. I think that speaks to Mr. Dixon's point around internal healing. That's part of repair, because reparations is about a repair in all of its different aspects in terms of what we have to do to ourselves to make ourselves whole, part of which is the struggle for it. And then what do we have to do to make ourselves whole from the injustices and crimes which are continuing to be perpetrated against us. So I wanted to thank Onaji for inviting me to this. I'm very optimistic. Like I said, even though the times are not favorable in one sense, in another sense they are, because at least now we're not under any illusion about who we're fighting for, who we're fighting against, and what we're fighting for, and that these kind of things have to continue, and we continue to get the word out about it, and we encourage everybody to participate in August 29th. There's going to be some things that happen in the DMV area, folks there, some folks down in the Atlanta area. I think Leon may know Mickey and the Kansas City folks said they may be doing something. So there's things going on. And in New York and Brooklyn, in the tri-state area, we're going to be doing something in Brooklyn. We're asking people from the tri-state area to come to the People's Republic of Brooklyn and celebrate with us and demonstrate with us on August 29th at 1 p.m. at Fulton Park, which is right across the street from Boys and Girls High School. But you can get the information on the website. So thank you. And, as our former chairperson, Viola Plummer, would say, straight ahead.
Stiff resistance.
I made some typos, but you can figure that out.
Dr. Matilda Shakur, huh?
I made some typos, but you all can figure that out.
Okay.
This is the year and back.
Mm-hmm.
So people, Michelle didn't speak. And I'm really happy that she is here. Michelle, are you able to say a few words? I want your space, your words in this historical space. Michelle?
Hi, how are you, Dr. Muit?
I'm well.
How is everyone? I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to hear that the issue of reparations is still on the table, because it was such a travesty what happened. And we need to know what can be done. We need to know what can be done, as well as have a feeling of being safe in order to gather, in order to keep the idea or the issue of reparations on the table, because the United States has a history of our leaders, for some reason, when they're speaking up for Black people, they just seem to be assassinated. And this is not without design. This is not without prior, as you say, a coup or whatever. And what can be done? Because when Black people, when they assemble, we don't want the National Guard to come out and tear gas us. We don't want any more of our leaders to die. So what is the issue? What can be done so that Black people can assemble, as well, and deal with a president that is trying to erase all of our history and everything that we put into place? He's now trying to come up with executive orders and get Congress or the powers that be to change everything. So what is the issue? How can we handle the reparation issue? Because Lord knows it's so long overdue.
Michelle, thank you so very much. I'm honored that you have taken time out of your schedule to be with us today. And how did you find out about this event?
You emailed me.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So, as we move, I want Nikki to end this, but I would like to say that as a social worker, professor teaching social work and psychology, that we certainly need to look at policy advocacy, certainly need to look at research and education. When I did my master's back in 2004, I used historical trauma as my major research, but also added that at the time, Mumia Abu-Jamal was a political prisoner, and also Lenin Peltier. And isn't it something that the federal court has given released Leonard Peltier, but still capture and retain the presence of Mumia, who's ailing physically. It shows us that we are the major threat to this empire. We are the major threat, and symbolically, they are reinforcing that with the torture and the further imprisonment of Mumia. And we can go back. We can look at all our political prisoners. How was it they come into these slave camps without cancer, and when they leave with cancer? How in the hell is that shit happening? We can look at Don Pedro Bisso Campos, where they experimented on him while he was in prison, as they do all
Yeah,
our political
radiation.
prisoners.
Right.
Tonight, I'm going to go into what is called State Corrections Facility here in Chester, and there's the lifers. They're doing 50 years. Who has been benefiting from that other than this illegal regime called the United States of America, and of course now it's really serious because so many of the guards are Black and African, not only in terms of state prisons but local prisons as well. So we have become the gatekeepers, right, of our own people. This is madness. This shit is madness. Um, but we have to continue to connect with our brothers and sisters behind the wall, support them. We're coming up to the anniversary of Attica, where all those brothers was found innocent, and they waited as long as they could so people can die out before they would actually we can provide compensation. So yes, to continue, the struggle does continue, and Pamoja Tu session that together we will win, but we can only win as we continue to organize. As we said in the East, and other folks picked up it. We're going to educate, we're going to agitate, and we're going to organize. That's the only way we're going to get out of this, is for us to be together. And because all of you have shown up today, is in fact a confirmation of that struggle. That we believe in ourselves, our people. We believe in our right to win. It was Asata who said that we must love each other. We must protect each other. We must fight because we have nothing to lose but our chains. And all our brothers and sisters who have given us the pattern and have given us the formulas. I so miss the voice of our illustrious Queen Mother, Viola Plummer, who is in the ancestor rank. She's a part of that crew that says, "Find me in the whirlwind." That's what Garvey said. That I ain't leaving you. You gonna find me. So I know she's in the whirlwind, cooking up something, and it's coming. So we know we're going to win. But the thing is, but we have to fight. There's no other way out of this. And Michelle, you brought up such a key point earlier. I don't know if you was on the call when I referenced our brothers in Georgia in 1865. They said we want land, and then they said we want protection, right? So the two critical things that must always be a part of our conversation is land and is security. To make nothing, no conversation can take place without us making sure that land is inserted and making sure that security is inserted. Because we can talk about Wall Street, we can talk about the one in Florida. It's about 500 of those settlements, but each one of them was attacked, right? So we have to continue to protect ourselves, and continue to fight for reparations. Vicky, did you leave? Okay, Vicky, I think she had to shut. I have to log
Yeah,
off.
she just said she had to log off.
Yeah, thanks to all speakers, guests, and audience who participated in this campaign. Many thanks to Baba J for your
Thank you.
organizing. Take good care. So I'm sorry that I talked too much and didn't give her a chance to say some funny words. So she did put it in print. But I want to thank all of you. Joseph, thank you for that hand clap. And say that Lucha Continua, we will win Promoter Tuta without a doubt. And I do have people's emails. I'll be sending out the recording of this that you'll be able to share with your family. And the only way that we're going to make this work is that we have to share the wealth. And that's each other, our love and our respect for each other. Like Asata said, we have nothing to lose but our chains, people. Let's get free. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.